In the last class, we gave a brief introduction to what we're trying to do here, which is to provide an underpinning, really to connect all the halachas of Shabbos with the essence of Shabbos. We see all these lists of things that you cannot do, and we're trying to figure out how to convert that into the meaningful experience that is Shabbos. And in order to do that, we need to look at some of the philosophical underpinning of the melachas and the halachas of Shabbos. So that's what we're going to be doing. Last week, I gave it a little bit of a taster. We looked at just one of the parts of Shabbos, which is lighting candles, and tried to figure out how the halacha of lighting Shabbos candles can actually teach us about what is menucha of Shabbos, what is the inner peace of Shabbos that we're trying to get to. Today, I want to go a bit broader, and I want to start with the fundamental question: what is Melachah? What is Melachah? The word Melachah, which we take to mean work, the things that are prohibited on Shabbos, I want to try to figure out, well, can we give that a better definition? As I said last week, when I was a fresh Baal Tshuva in yeshiva, and I didn't know that much, so about 3-4 months in, I was visited by some Israeli cousins. And we were walking around, and they're like, what do you religious Jews know about, Shabbat and work and whatever? It's like, how do you define this stuff? Like, for me going for a drive in the countryside, that's restful. So why can't I do that on Shabbat? And I was like, I don't know. Don't ask me. Like, I'm new here. I'm learning this stuff right now. So whereas somebody last week said, well, isn't Melachah work? Isn't it doing work? And the answer to that is, well, if Melachah was called work, then you wouldn't be able to move a couch on Shabbos. You wouldn't be able to move your dining room table on Shabbos. And if it was really, and if the way that we defined the prohibited actions of Shabbos was based on how much you exerted yourself, then you'd probably be allowed to put eyeliner on Shabbos. You'd certainly be allowed to tear some toilet paper on Shabbos. So the word Melachah cannot simply be translated as work. So what I want to try to do is give ourselves a better definition of that. Yes, Ariella.
Isn't it like Melachah comes from the third man Melachah, but Muktzah is from the safeguards of the rabbis.
So we'll get to Muktzah. Muktzah is dirabban. Muktzah is rabbinic, right, in origin. So Muktzah was a fence that was put around certain things that we don't want to come to do Melachah, and so they said, well, let's not even move things that we could potentially do Melachah with and stuff like that. But we'll get there. Please God. Right now, I want to look at the essence itself of what is Melachah. It's found right in all of the fundamental texts of when the Chumash starts talking about Shabbos, it almost always speaks about Melachah, right? From the very beginning, right? When it says Hashem completed as a Melachah asher asa, right? It's called Melachto. And then when you see it again in the Ten Commandments, Sheishes Yamim Ta'avod Ta'asas Kol Melachtecha, you'll do all your work, you'll do all your Melachah. So Shabbos and Melachah are really very intrinsically linked. So we have to figure out what is Melachah. So one of the best places to look when you're looking for definitions of things, it's really important because one of the biggest barriers to understanding Torah is the language. It's a language barrier. We're not Hebrew speakers, or at least most of us are not native Hebrew speakers. And there's an Italian phrase, which is that traduttore traditore, which means every translation is a traitor, is a translation. It's an interpretation. Translations always change the meaning of the original intent, right? Especially when it comes to Hebrew and English. English is a very bulky language. It's the largest dictionary in the world, English. We have more synonyms and more words for the same thing than we know what to do with. And that's part of the problem, is that for us, English is a little bit of a disposable language. We think, every synonym is basically saying the same thing, but a little bit different. So when we get to Hebrew and we see words that are, famously, the Jews have a lot of words for happiness, right? What's a word for happiness? Simcha. What else? What's another word for happiness? Come on, guys. It's a song. Simcha Sason, Gila, Dina, Ditza, Chedva. You've never heard these words? Gila, Rina, Ditza, Vechedva. It's in the Shabbat Brachos. You've ever gone to a wedding? Ever? No? Right? We've got Aliza is another word for happiness. There's so many words for happiness. Jews love happiness. That's why we have so many words for it. But for us, it's not just synonyms. Every single one of those words is saying something different about a different type of happiness. A different type of happiness. So the English language trains us to not be very precise with words. The other problem with the English language is that anyone who was in my class right before this one, the name of the word doesn't mean anything. Sometimes it means something. Sometimes it has like a Latin root, but oftentimes we are totally divorced from the names themselves and what they mean and where they come from. One of the coolest things to study is etymology. It's like, where does it come from, right? So if you really understood the roots of certain words, you take a word like educate. What does educate mean? To teach. Great. A synonym, right? Teach and educate. They don't mean the same thing. The word educate, now that we're learning Hebrew, okay, so in Latin, the prefix E is actually a shortened version of the word ex, which means to come out of, right? Ex means to go out of something, right? Like exit, yeah? Duk. Anyone want to guess what the word duk means?
Like an inference? Because I'm thinking of deduction.
Well, it's based on the same root, but that's not what it means. So a duk actually means to draw, like an aqueduct, right? A duct or an aqueduct. So what does educate mean? It means to draw out. It means to find what's already inside of you and to bring it out of you. Now, by the way, that's interestingly, it's not always true, but that's very, very close to the definition of chinuch in Hebrew, right? Which is, chinuch is to find something that you're meant for and to try to get and to train you to do that, to try to get you to do what you're already good at, what's already inside of you. That's a very different model of teaching if you understand what education actually means. So the words themselves are incredibly important when we want to know what we're actually reading. You can gain so much insight into Jewish philosophy just by learning words, just by learning what the words actually mean. So I want to look at the word Melachah. So one of the greatest scholars who spent a lot of time trying to understand where words come from was Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. Anyone ever heard of him? Rabbi Hirsch. When did he live? Not that long ago, comparatively speaking. He lived in the early mid 1800s. Okay, mid 1800s, and Rabbi Hirsch lived in Germany. And if anyone knows anything about Jewish history, Germany in the 1800s was really the birthplace of the Reform movement. And so what Rabbi Hirsch was trying to do was trying to combat Reform Judaism. And one of the ways he did that was he tried to show people the beauty of the language itself. Because even if you didn't know anything about Judaism or whatever, as long as you knew what some of the Hebrew words were, he could show you what they mean. And he said, what these other people are telling you, this is what it means, that's what it means, it's not true, and I'll prove it to you from the language itself. So Rabbi Hirsch spoke a lot about what a Melachah is. What is a Melachah? And based on that, we can learn why we don't do that on Shabbos. So, can I ask you to please hand those out? It's just one page. All right, so I cut and pasted a little bit here. Rabbi Hirsch speaks about this a little bit in this week's Parsha, in the Ten Commandments, where he speaks about what number commandment is Shabbos. Number 4. Good. I'm glad someone got that. You guys should know the 10 Commandments. That's a pretty good one. He speaks about it a little bit here, and he speaks about it a little bit at the beginning of Parshas Vayakhel, where it also starts speaking about Shabbos and introduces some of the Melachahs over there. Okay, can I please have a volunteer to read the first paragraph, the first snippet that I put there on the page? Who wants to just be the guinea pig here? Naomi, go for it.
6 days.
Oh, we have already. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So I brought Shemos, right? This is the pasuk. This is the pasuk in this week's parsha, on Parshas Yisro. Sheishes yamim tavod. 6 days you will work. The word avoda is more like serving, like a servant, right? Avoda. Six days you will serve, you will work. Va'asisa kol malachtecha, and you'll do all of your malacha. V'yom hashvi, Shabbos la'Hashem Elokecha. It's a Shabbos to Hashem. Lo saseh kol malacha. Don't do any malacha. Okay, go for it, Naomi.
We have already defined the idea of malacha. Just as malach is a personal creature who carries out the will and message of someone else, so is malacha any material or thing that is made of service to carry out the will or order of anybody's will.
Okay, so the first thing that Rabbi Hirsch points out is that the word malacha is very closely related to another word, malach. Now, what's a malach? And a malach is, one type of malach is an angel, but the general term for malach is a messenger, right? Yaakov sends malachim to Esav. On a deeper level, you can interpret that as mamish, spiritual, heavenly beings, but in the simple understanding, he just sends messengers, right? So a malach is a messenger. So what is a messenger?
Someone you send to carry out like something.
Someone you send to carry out something, maybe even on your behalf, right? Okay. Now, Rabbi Hirsch says something interesting. What does malach have to do with malacha? What does malach have to do with malacha? So he says, a malach is a personal creature who carries out the will and message of someone else. So what is malacha?
The service of God.
Is any material or a thing that is made of service to carry out the will or order of your mind. Anyone get that?
No.
Okay. Let's keep reading and then we'll circle back.
Because when
Okay?
you do something, your mind is sending you to do it.
Let's keep reading and then we'll circle back. All right? Asiyat malacha.
Asiyat malacha is the transformation of things or of some material into being, or malach, i.e. to impress on something or material such as permanent state or condition, that henceforth is qualified to serve the purpose that we desire it. We make it serve our will and our purpose. Every asiyat malacha is exercising our mastery over the matter of this world. And this mastery of ours we are to exercise only as service.
Okay. It's complicated. And the person who translates Rav Hirsch is complicated also. Rav Hirsch he wrote originally in German. This was written in German, not in Hebrew. And so when people are reading the Hagrashar Hirsch in Hebrew, Rav Shimshon Hirsch, they're actually reading something that was translated from German to Hebrew. So the Hebrew is complicated. He wrote in a very high German because he was speaking to people who were affected by the Enlightenment and the Reform movement, people who were very well educated. So we have to slow down here because the translation is a bit high-end English. All right. He says, Malacha is anything that is made of service to carry out the will of your mind. Okay. What happens? You have an idea in your head. You want the world to look a certain way. Carrying out that agency from your head into reality is whatever it is that you're affecting.
Breathing is doing that though.
We'll get there. Okay? We'll get there. When you do malacha, you're taking some wool that's on a lamb's body, and you're turning it into something that's usable to make clothing out of. Now, what have you done? You had an intent. You saw the world as in its natural state. You said, I think the world should be a different way. I want the world to look different, either to accommodate my purposes as a human being, or maybe, as Rabbi Hirsch said at the very end, I want it to be used as avoda. I'm doing this in the service of something else. So when I take an intentional act with my mind and I use that to transform the physical world, that's called a Melachah. Why? Because the physical world is now my malach. It's now the messenger of my intentions. I want there to be clothes in the world. This wool is now the messenger, the agent of my desire for there to be clothing in the world. You got what I'm saying? Some blank stares, some yeses, some nos. Okay, questions. What do we not understand? Because we have to figure out what we don't understand to be able. Yes, Katie?
Sorry. It makes sense, but I feel like you can say that about anything. Like,
You can say that about anything.
Yeah.
So like what?
You know. Because I guess not example you used creating something.
Yeah. Using an intent of your mind to transform the physical world around you. That's what a Melachah is.
Making a salad. We're allowed to make salad.
Okay. Fantastic. So maybe making a salad is a transformation. Maybe. So we'll have to figure it out. No, it's not. So what we'll say is that there are obviously going to be limits on how creative that has to be. Have you really created something new? Or have you just put lettuce together with tomatoes? Now, if you chop up that salad really, really, really finely, such that the mixture now is almost very hard to discern, and you've created much more of a something new out of that, a very, very tiny salad, that's a Melachah. Or if you take two things and you combine them together so much that they become one thing, that's lush, right? And that's a Melachah. So there's obviously going to be limits on how creative you have to be in order for something to be called a new transformation. Yes.
But if it's
Chaya.
the whole idea that Melachah is creating something new, then why are there certain Melachos that don't have to do?
All right, wait, we'll get there. First, I want to just know, does everyone get Rav Hirsch? Rav Hirsch says that Melachah comes from the word malach. A malach is a messenger. Yes? So who's the messenger in Melachah?
Or the action itself.
The object, whatever you're transforming, becomes a messenger of your intention. You have an active intention. You want the world to look a certain way. Now, by the way, there's something interesting that comes as a result of that. If you do something mindlessly, have you done a Melachah? No. If I lean against the wall and I accidentally turn on the light switch, that's not a Melachah. I haven't done a Melachah there. I haven't done anything. What?
What is that?
Because it needs to be what the Gemara calls malachas machsheves, an intentional malacha, something that you had an intent to do and carried it out that way. Then it's a malacha. But if you do something that's just, I don't know, you're walking around and all of a sudden you happen to, trip on, on a piece of grass which gets pulled out of the ground, you didn't do anything. You see how there has to be, there's two elements here to Melachah that Rav Hirsch is saying. There's your brain. You have to, as a human being, have to want something to happen in the world. And then you have to use the physical world to be able to transform that as a result of your intention. Everyone clear so far? Right? That's why you can't say, I'm going to take this dough and then transform it in the natural world to turn it into something entirely new. That's why you can't say, well, what I really want to do is I want to make this tree grow better. So I'm going to add water to it, or I'm going to prune it in order that it grows in a new way. Everyone see what we're getting at? I can't build this building. I can't add a nail, right? Because I'm now transforming the natural world. I'm creating something new with my intention. Okay, yes, Ariella and then Esther.
What defines the extent of the action?
All right, we're going to have to get there, right? Because obviously there are limits, right? Not everything, moving this is not a Melachah. Even though I had an intention to move the water bottle and I moved it from one place to another.
So you're not creating anything.
I haven't transformed that, right? Now, it could be that if I if I move things around and in such a way that they remain stuck where they are, and I've created a certain pattern out of that, then maybe I'm not allowed to do that. They talk about how travel Scrabble is a problem. Because in travel Scrabble, you fit the pieces in and they stick in and they stay that way, right? So now that I've done something that's somewhat permanent in the world and I've created a word or I've created a pattern that has some lasting effect on the physical world, I can't do that either.
Is that the same thing with like Legos?
Legos, they say, are they stick together too tightly. It's possible for them to remain that way forever. And of course, you have those crazy Lego enthusiasts who build tons and tons of things, and they keep in that way for years, right? But if I tie a bow in my shoe that can very easily be pulled out, then there's nothing lasting about it. I haven't really transformed it. But if I tie a very hard knot, which would require a lot of effort to untie it, I've now transformed, I've changed the world with my intention. So you need your brain and you need the thing that's being transformed. Yes, Esther?
So, what if you have an intention to do something bad but you don't do it? Like, what if I'm like, oh, I really want to turn on the light right now, but I can.
Haven't done anything. You
But
need.
I thought there's two parts to it. So when
You need both. You need to turn both keys in order for something to have happened. Remember, I can without thinking about it, my elbow slips and I hit the light switch. I had no intention, but I did the action. That doesn't do anything. And it's the same thing is true if I just have the intention, but I don't follow through with it. I haven't used my will, right? What's a messenger? A messenger is I've given you instructions and you've gone and carried it out. If the messenger has either not listened to my instructions or hasn't carried it out, then the messenger's not a messenger.
I don't know. I learned in school that like if you turn on a light accidentally, like you should still do it.
Wait. There's a difference between accidental versus unintentional. Okay? So accidental has a very specific term in halacha. Shogeg means, this is how it's defined, either I didn't know it was Shabbos or I didn't remember that it was Shabbos. That way when I'm turning on the light switch and I'm doing it intentionally, but I just forgot that it was Shabbos.
Right.
Anyone ever done that? I once woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, turn on the light and I start looking for it, like, wait a minute, it's Shabbos.
Yeah.
So, and then I had a light on in my room for the rest of Shabbos. Or the other way for it to be called shogeg is I didn't know it was a melachah. So I'm tying a double knot on my kid's shoes and someone's like, you can't do that, by the way, you realize that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I thought you could do that, right? No. One is you know exactly what you're doing and you know that it would be usher on Shabbos, but you just don't remember that it's Shabbos. That's one way of calling it shogeg. Or another one is you know it's Shabbos, but you don't know that what you're doing is usher on Shabbos. So there's intent. You're intentionally doing something, and that's why you have to do a little bit of tshuva on a shogeg. You have to do tshuva on a shogeg because you should have learned the halachas. You should have been more mindful that it's Shabbos, whatever it is. But somebody who just, you lean against the wall and you had no idea what you're doing, there's no intention there. Is that clear? Okay? Yeah.
Similar in that vein, is there a loophole that you could use to change your intention but still do the action?
Yes. Yeah. So, for example, the Gemara gives an example, right? It says, I want to actually pull out that flower, but as I'm going, my hand slips and I actually accidentally pick up the other flower, right? Now, you can't do that.
Right.
But that's called that you didn't. We say that you didn't have machshava for that. You didn't have intent because you were picking up the wrong thing.
That's so interesting.
But
Yeah.
you did have intent.
Right, you had intent for the other thing. So you didn't do the right thing, and it is usher. But deraisa, you haven't done anything.
So you had intent to pick up the flower, which that itself is not allowed.
That's right. But you didn't pick up that flower. You picked up the other flower. You see, there was a mistranslation. The messenger didn't do what it was meant to do.
But you plan on that.
But you saying
That's right. And you know what? There's no biblical punishment for attempted murder either. In other words, you can have all the plans in the world to do something wrong, and if you don't do it, then you still morally are a bad person,
But you
right?
do.
And you may have to do tshuva, but you are not a murderer.
But you do it.
Right, like
But I
you
did the
saying-
wrong thing.
Go,
Yes?
Like I plan to, for this example, killing,
Yes,
I plan to kill her, but I accidentally kill her.
That's right.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm
Now,
good.
what we're saying is that you're not okay.
No, because you
Right?
still killed someone.
You still killed someone, and you're still liable, but you're
saying
not.
In terms of the flower.
But in
it's
terms of the
okay.
flower, biblically speaking, you have not fulfilled both criteria, which is I have an intention to transform that object. I didn't do that. I had an intention and it was carried on something else. Okay? You've still got to do tshuva. It's still usser. It's dirabanan. It's usser. You can't do it. Trust me. All right? There's no getting around it. But you have not fulfilled the biblical command, the biblical prohibition of doing a malacha. Okay?
But is that how intention works though? Because if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm gonna pretend that I'm gonna go do that one, but I'm really gonna do that one, you're still planning on making a mistake. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if you're trying to fool yourself, then yes, you probably have done something wrong. Yes, if you're trying to fool yourself, then maybe it is you do have machshava. Okay, I want to move on a little bit because there's a little bit more to do. What time is it?
11:56.
Okay, fine. So we got what did they say we should stop at 12:25?
Yeah, unless you want to go earlier.
Okay, fine. All right. I want to add to this. Okay, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. We have
I'm not saying to end class early.
No. Yeah, Rabbi K. Look, Rabbi K said that we may want to end a little bit early today. So okay. All right. Let's keep going. Is everyone clear on the basic understanding why malacha comes from the word malach? Is there anybody who's still unclear about that?
I'm very confused.
Okay. Okay? It is brain power. It's been 3 classes in a row. Trust me, I've been speaking for 3 hours. Like it's, yeah, Chaya.
I think I understand what this Rav is saying, but my question is, could it be that it doesn't mean that? Could it be that malacha and malach are just 2 totally separate words, and malacha refers to the sections in the Torah when it says don't do this, don't do this, don't do that?
The Hebrew language is made up in such a way that all the words that are etymologically similar, in other words, that share the same root, share a very similar meaning. Yeah. So what would be a good example of that? A good example of that would be. Okay, so. That's a complicated example. All right, I'll use it anyway. All right, so the word kos is a vessel, right? Right. So if you pick up something, you have a kos. It's a cup, right? It's a kos. Now, if you have a chair is a kisei. So a chair, kos and kisei share a 2-letter root, which is chaf samach, right? Now, a chair is also a vessel, right? But it's a vessel not for liquid or for a thing. It's a vessel for a person. So kisei is literally a kos for an aleph, something that contains something that's a lot more divine than simply, liquid. So kos and kisei share a similar root, and they share a very similar meaning. You can do this with pretty much every word in the Hebrew alphabet, where you can see how the words that share the same root have very, very similar meaning. So there's nothing random in Lashon HaKodesh. In the same way that when we study, the Chumash, there's no random extra words or random extra letters. Does anyone get that?
But not like the modern words.
What? The modern Ivrit is derivative. Yeah, sometimes they didn't get the right meaning, or they don't always know what the root is, or something like that. Well, the people who invented the dictionary, Ben Yehuda, was pretty clever, but he didn't always know the deep biblical meaning of every word. So Rav Hirsch is going off of the assumption, which I think many, many people have, is that the Hebrew language is written divinely, and therefore it can't be an accident that the word malach and malacha have the same root. Okay? All right. Good. Let's read the next paragraph in Rav Hirsch. Can somebody please be the next? Yes, Dasi, go ahead. Just start with it occurs.
It occurs nearly 200 times in the scriptures, and in no single instance does the word itself indicate strenuous work.
Okay, so Chaya, to your point, Rav Hirsch is also now going to draw on the fact that we can understand what words mean based on their context. So if I look around all over the Torah and I see how is the word malacha used, Rav Hirsch says never is malacha being used to describe physical hard labor. And what he's going to say is, it's never called Melachah in Egypt. That's the hardest labor there is. They never use the word Melachah. Yeah, keep going, please.
Just as a slave work in Egypt is never called Melachah. But everywhere the essential idea of the word Melachah seems to be, as indeed its etymological derivation.
Etymology is the study of the roots of words, right?
Derivation from Malach has told us not the greater or lesser amount of bodily fatigue, but the intelligent carrying out of an intention.
The intelligent carrying out of an intention. That would probably be the best, shortest definition of Melachah.
So that even if we knew nothing of the oral tradition explanation, simply from the actual meaning of the word and from the hundredfold evidence of the way it is used in the Bible, we should say that lo taseh kol malacha means thou shalt not perform any constructive work.
Bam! You have an answer to my Israeli cousins. Right? What are you doing when you drive? You are combusting petroleum to turn it into fire, which causes something to move. That's an intelligent carrying out of intentional work. It's not strenuous, but that's not the point of Shabbos. Shabbos is not simply about physical relaxation. And as we're going to see, it's about the cessation of my intelligent will on trying to transform the world. That's what I'm not doing on Shabbos. Yes, Chaya.
Could it also be about, though, just relaxing?
Oh, there's a lot about menucha, right? There is something about menucha. The type of menucha that we're trying to get to is something that is achieved through ceasing to carry out intelligent behavior with intention in the world to transform it.
Right, because there is a point in the Chumash when it says, like, don't even have your servants and your horses and your animals work so that they feel refreshed.
Oh, well, it doesn't say so that they feel refreshed. So the question's going to be, well, why do our animals and our servants have to also rest? And really what the Torah says is because God rested on the seventh day, and it's a testimony that God rested as well. And all of our animals and all of our servants are all demonstrating to the universe and to everyone else who's paying attention that there is an element of, as we said last week, there's something called menucha in the world. There's something called, I am more than just my creative contributions to the physical world. I'm not just my achievements. I'm not just my resume. I'm something else. And the only way you can see that part of me is what happens when I stop. So you start to see now how we're getting from the cessation of Melachah, we're getting to what the real essence of Shabbos is supposed to be. Is like, well, what happens if you take away my hobbies and my career and my daily activities and everything that I bake and everything that I build? Well, what's left? There's something else, something left, something really important. Okay, let's keep going. Dasi, will you please?
Thou shalt not carry out thy intention on anything. Make no thing the bearer of thy purpose, thy ideas. In general, thou shalt not produce, not construct.
Thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. So now we have a better understanding. Is like, Melachah is trying to get us, based on the word itself and based on the context of the word itself, it's trying to get us to understand that there's something that as human beings is very important, because it says in the pasuk, "V'asisa kol malachtecha," 6 days a week, the majority of your life, you should be doing malacha. You should be using your brain to look around at the world and figure out, what can I fix? What can I make better? That's what we are. That's what we are as human beings, primarily. That's what we're here in the world to do, primarily. We're here to figure out, how can I improve what's in the natural world? You know that story about Rabbi Akiva and Turnus Rufus? There's a famous story. Turnus Rufus was a Roman. I see you. 1 second. Turnus Rufus was a Roman general, and he was not very kind to the Jews at a time when the Jewish state was a vassal state to the Roman Empire, which meant that they were kind of under the protection of the Roman Empire. They were semi-independent, but they had to pay a lot of taxes. So Tornus Rufus once asked Rabbi Akiva, you tell me, according to your religion, whose actions are greater, God's actions or humans' actions? And Rabbi Akiva, with a straight face, said, oh, humans' actions, of course, much greater. And Tornus Rufus says, what are you, some sort of a heretic or something? And Rabbi Akiva said, I know what you were trying to get me to say. You wanted me to say that God's actions are greater, at which point you would challenge me on our tradition of bris milah. And you'd say, well, who are you to make human bodies any better than the way God made them? So I'm telling you, humans' actions are greater than God's. Now, fast forward several months, and it's time for the Jewish state, to pay its tributary to the Romans. So normally they show up with the best of the produce of Israel, and they bring wheat cakes and breads and all kinds of fancy, delicious things for the Roman general to enjoy. This time, the messengers come in and they lay out a bushel of wheat on the floor. And Tornus Rufus says, what's the meaning of this? Where's my cake? Where's my bread? Who did this? Who put you up to this? And they said, Rabbi Akiva. So they call in Rabbi Akiva. And he says, what is this, a joke? You making fun of me? What is this? And Rabbi Akiva says, no, I'm sorry. I thought you thought that God's actions are greater than human. So who are we to bake bread? Like, the wheat is clearly better than the bread. So Rabbi Akiva was demonstrating in a very cheeky way that as human beings, God puts us on this world, on this earth, to improve and elevate the world. That's what we're here for. It's an amazing thing. So Melachah is actually an incredibly important thing for human beings to do 6 days a week. Now, why do we stop on the 7th? Let's take a look at the last paragraph. Oh yes, Chaya, you had a question.
Yeah, if the idea is not to do anything, like create anything with intention, like wouldn't even like learning Torah or studying for a school exam,
great,
be included in that?
Okay, so is learning Torah very creative, right? Studying, very creative. Can anyone here give Chaya an answer? Why is that not called Melachah? Yes, Ariella?
Possibly because, like, we're using, like, our ideas to, like, transform material and, like, hold on, wait.
That's why it would be a Melachah.
But we're using Hashem's ideas. And
Okay.
also,
Now, it's interesting because what we're going to see is that there's a lot of things that we can't do for Hashem on Shabbos. In fact, where do we learn out what all the Melachas are? From the building of the Mishkan. So the most important thing we could possibly do for God, we cannot do on Shabbos. It's not just because it's God's Torah that makes it not a Melacha. Why is it not a Melacha?
You're not creating anything.
You're not transforming the physical world.
But like you're transforming like an idea. Like let's say I'm learning.
You are learning and developing an idea in your mind, in your intention, but that's where it remains. It remains there. Now, if you were to write that idea down on a piece of paper, that's Melacha.
But if I'm like, let's say I'm giving like a Devar Torah, if I'm learning Torah and then I'm coming up with a new idea and then I share that.
Amazing,
idea,
beautiful.
That is spreading it.
That is spreading it to other minds, but you're not transforming the physical world.
But I'm creating a new idea.
You can create a new idea. You should. It's Shabbos. It's great.
But that is.
It remains in the world of potential. It is not, you have not, until you have written it down, affected something in the physical world with your hands, with your feet, right? If you've built a sculpture out of the Devar Torah, that's Melachah. If you've written it down out of the Devar Torah, that's Melachah. If you have, some say even if you've recorded it, and it now gets etched into, it's now complicated now that everything's digital, but when things were recorded on analog film or tape.
If you have a video thing that's always recording the room.
So it's a very complicated question. That's a more complicated question. Okay? It's a more complicated question. The simple answer is when we walk down the street, we're being filmed all the time, right? And so you are totally allowed to walk down the street, but if someone said, can I take your picture, can I take your photograph of you, video you on Shabbos, you're not supposed to do that. But that's a more complicated question, so I don't want to go too deep into that. Okay? Katie?
What if, creating ideas and thinking about ideas makes you want to actually create something, and so you...
Good, go do it on Sunday.
Yeah, but are you not allowed to wait until the end of Shabbat to do it? Like, are you not allowed to have the intention of doing something after Shabbat?
There's another idea which is comes from Tanakh about the idea that one should not think about mundane things that they're going to do the rest of the week, right? But again, these are a bit further on. That's a bit more of a decree on the original idea, which is don't do Melachah. But we also want your mind to stay in a relatively holy place, because it's one thing to just stop affecting the physical world, but once you stop affecting the physical world and all you're doing is thinking about the Eagles and the Chiefs, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I just read last night that's who's in the Super Bowl. It's amazing. I love being in Israel. It's like December 31st, like another day of the week. It's incredible. So yeah, you want to keep your thoughts focused in a holy place, and that's why you're not supposed to read secular magazines on Shabbos, and you're not supposed to speak about business deals on Shabbos. But that has less to do with Melachah. It has more to do with what's the essence of what are we meant to focus on, right? Melachah is about what you don't do. It's tough to figure out what you do, okay?
Is reading a secular book considered Melachah, or is it just...
It is not considered Melachah, but it's something that in Halacha, based on Tanakh, you're not supposed to do on Shabbos. It's not in the spirit of Shabbos, okay? I want to stay focused here because there's so much we could talk about, and we could go on so many different tangents, but I want to make sure that we get what we're here to get. What time is it?
12:13.
Okay, fine. So we got another 5-10 minutes. All right. So we now have Melachah comes from Malach. It's a messenger. You have to have intent. You have to be able to carry it out and transform the physical world in a creative way, right? And we've seen that's what it is. It's not strenuous work. It's the human act of affecting the physical world, and we want to do that 6 days a week. That's what we're here for. But for some reason on the seventh day, we're not to do it. We're not meant to do it. And the question is why? Can I have a volunteer for the final paragraph, please? Abigail Chana, go for it. Start with if.
If we look into all these categories, they all have the common quality of being actual constructive or productive activities, i.e., such by which the object becomes changed, and by the intentional work accomplished.
Okay, so all the malachas, I skipped the part where he goes through all 39 malachas, but each of the malachas is you carrying out, you change something in the world. Something becomes different, right? Ground up wheat is very different from the wheat kernel. Right? It's a totally new thing when you've chopped it up that finely. Okay?
Man's power and mastery over matter is demonstrated. Hence, refraining from exercising this power on Shabbat is a befitting manner of showing man's allegiance to the one only true master and creator, to whom man in his mastery over matter and apparently creative powers is only a leaseholder, a servant.
All right, so that's worth dwelling on that for a minute. Okay? So he now introduces the idea. Human beings, God says, Pru Ravu, Kiv Shua Aretz, right? Rule over everything. You are masters of this world. Except when you're not. Because as godly and divine and creative and accomplished as we are, there's a part of us as well that always has to recognize that there's something greater than we are. And the way to do that is to say, okay, I'm running the business, I'm taking care of everything, I'm making my own food, I'm doing all these things, except there's one day where I just say, that's it. As one of my rabbis say, I hand back the keys. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not the one who's ultimately in control. I stop my creative transformation of the physical world as a recognition that there was someone here before me. And all of this is not here as a result of me. I can transform it, I can improve it, God wants me to do that, but at the end of the day, I'm here to do the bidding of something greater than myself. And the way that we demonstrate that is by stopping the physical work. That's right? So if I'm a creator, if I'm a master, by stopping that, I recognize the one true master and creator. And really, I'm a leaseholder, which means I've been given permission. For now, in a certain sense, I'm the agent of God to improve the physical world. But I'm not the one who's giving the orders here. I'm answering to something higher. Okay, you want to keep reading, please?
Even the gathering together and heaping up of the products of the soil, and the catching of a wild animal or fish, although the fruit or the animal is not changed in itself, brings about such an essential change in bringing it out of the free state of nature into the control and power of human possession, that these acts, too, fall under the same basic idea as the others.
Okay, so you see that what I'm doing is, even if I catch an animal, trap an animal, what I'm doing is I'm taking it from being something wild to being something domesticated, something that's now no longer free, no longer part of the natural world. And he's going to do that. He speaks about that specifically for a lot of the melachas and goes into the details of how exactly it works that you're now creatively transforming the physical world. But this is the first of what we hope will be multiple answers, multiple explanations for why it is that we don't do melacha. Answer number one, according to Rav Hirsch, is it's a recognition that I'm not ultimately in control here. That yes, it's true, I have been given power and authority and domain to be able to fix the world and improve the world as we see fit. But at the end of the day, if I think I'm God, and I think I am literally the creator and master of all of earth, then I'm running into a lot of trouble. At the end of the day, everything I create, do, fix, improve is service. As he said at the beginning, Sheishis Yamim Ta'avod, you will serve. All of your melacha during the 6 days of the week are just avoda. They're just service for something higher. Now, as we leave, I'm going to give you a riddle. And maybe on Wednesday you can tell me the answer. On Friday night, we sing Shalom Aleichem. My riddle to you is, based on everything we've read, why do we ask the angels to leave? Okay? Don't tell me now. Why do we say Tzeis L'Shalom? Why do we ask the angels to leave? Okay? That's going to be your homework for Wednesday, and I'll see you then.